All right, we will call to order Brainerd Safety and Public Works Committee meeting. It is December 5th, 2022, Monday, still Monday, 7 p.m. in City Council chambers. We just have two items on the agenda tonight. First of which is approval of the revision of a transportation alternatives grant application. Mr. Dean, if you want to take this away.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. So at the November 7th meeting, we requested permission to apply for the Transportation Alternatives Grant for an off-street trail adjacent to 10th Avenue Northeast. I know that there's been discussions about a pedestrian bridge across 210 roughly in the Lum Park area. So after discussions with MnDOT about the possibility of submitting a second application, I was advised that we could potentially revise the existing application that we are going to submit for the 10th Avenue section of trail to include the bridge with a connection. So at this time, I'm requesting permission to revise the application to include a pedestrian bridge and a connection to 10th, as well as the 10th Avenue portion of the trail.
Mr. Chair,
Yep.
as I mentioned earlier, last time this came up, I abstained. I'm on the scoring committee for these projects when they go on to the MnDOT subcommittee, so I will again abstain on this item.
So with one abstention, one absence on the three-person committee, we will not be making a motion in this meeting. I will move to approve this during regular council and see if we get a second from someone else that's not abstaining. I guess I don't really have any questions other than I think you already made it clear that you were told that this is fine, that we don't need to submit another letter. It's okay at this point that we make some changes and add that pedestrian bridge, even though the cost might be a lot more. Considerably
more, yeah.
Was that mentioned in the original letter? How much we were applying for as far as the cost?
Yes, it was in the letter of intent. However, we were able to revise that.
Okay.
So that was the clarifying part, is if we would be able to submit a second letter of intent, because we're not quite to the application. Well, we're in the application phase now. But I was told that because there's a specific process of advertising, soliciting for the letters of intent past that period, that we are not able to submit a second one for a separate project. But we were granted the ability to revise the scope of this project, even though it's a considerable change, that we were able to do so.
Granted that by MnDOT.
By MnDOT, correct.
For MnDOT's direction.
Okay. All right. Unless you have any more discussion points. Nope. Do you see, I don't know if I can ask you this, but you're abstaining on it. Do you see a problem from Region 5 in revising this, as long as you're here?
You shouldn't even comment on it. If you're abstaining, you shouldn't be commenting on it.
Okay. You don't have to comment. We'll just move on. Okay. All right. Second item is going to be the adoption of a resolution removing the parking on Oak Street between Southeast 15th and Southeast 16th. This is our Safe Routes to School initiative in front of Harrison School. We had this on our agenda last meeting. If you want to go over that and the changes that we are looking at here. Mr. Dean, go ahead.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. So at that meeting, it was requested that we look into some alternative options to continue to maintain the on-street parking on the south side of Oak Street in that one block. Talking with the consultant, we were able to make some adjustments by narrowing the median down to a 6-foot median, which would be about the minimum kind of acceptable median for a refuge like this. By doing that, we were able to accommodate an 8-foot shoulder with a 12-foot lane. So in this way, we were able to accommodate both on-street parking as well as a through lane without encroachment. With that, I feel that there was a couple issues with the 6-foot median. I kind of described that in the memo, that it is not very comfortable from an accessibility standpoint. It's a very short refuge for people that are not able-bodied, might have some visual impairment. It becomes a very uncomfortable 6-foot median because of the distance between the truncated domes. The other side of that is during winter maintenance, the moto grader would not be able to pass through that area with with a parked vehicle on that shoulder because the motor graders are a 14-foot span. So if you had a vehicle in the 8-foot shoulder, that would only leave them 12 feet. They would have to bypass this block. And if we were to have any snow events that kind of, I'll call it, push the vehicle off the curb, then our dump trucks probably wouldn't be able to pass through this area either. So between the comfortability for the accessibility needs on a minimum median, as well as the difficulties with the maintenance, we are still recommending that we continue forward with an 8-foot median, the 6-foot shoulder, and the removal of the parking on the south side of the block. And I did clarify more in here from the verbal conversation at the last meeting about the comments that were received by the property owners adjacent to the one block.
Some pushback, but overall neutral to okay with losing the parking.
There's one that's opposed to it. Another one that understands the need, would prefer not to lose it, but understands that the need for the project, you might have to lose it. One was indifferent, one was supportive, and then I didn't hear from the fifth one.
Okay. Two ideas that just kind of come up. If we were to do a 8-foot shoulder and still have no parking during snow months, is that something that we've done anywhere else? Say no parking during school.
Like
The
from
school year?
November to April type thing?
Yeah, and then parking allowed during the summer could be an option.
Could be an option. They'd be pretty restricted. I mean, you wouldn't have a lot of, besides summertime, really.
Right.
Yep.
The other thing is if we went with the other option, maintaining that 8-foot median and 6-foot shoulder, why not just get rid of a few more feet of that shoulder and just continue that bump out across the whole block?
We could potentially do that. It would add some more cost to the project because you're replacing essentially a whole block of curb and gutter, a little bit more pavement removal, some more topsoil, and likely a little bit of concrete for some of the catwalks. So on this option, or on both options, we really weren't going to do anything with most of that south side curb line, just to save costs. We're going to do mostly rehab on the pavement surface, except for the areas where we're doing bump outs. We're going to have to rebuild all the way to top to bottom, but most everything's more of a mill and overlay type of resurfacing, just to try and save costs.
Okay. I know in our conversation you mentioned that maybe in the next decade or so, this is up for a possible rebuild, which whichever we choose here ends up not functioning the way we want it to, we could always revisit it and play with the overall width of the street at that time.
Yes, sir. There's some aging utilities that aren't quite ready for replacement, but I know BPU mentioned if we were to get in there, they would want to do some replacements. And as of right now, we weren't planning on doing any full rebuilds, but it's likely to see a lot of increased traffic over the next handful of years between the 210 project as well as some other projects. So the pavement's going to likely see a lot of stress in the next handful of years, and that'll probably need to be addressed as well.
Okay.
Just a couple comments. I think this project, we're improving both these intersections considerably, improving the safety, level of safety. We are overall trying to promote that alley loading, and I think this does that by removing that on-street parking. I think we talked a lot last time, a lot of these properties are already parking in the alley. The two on the corners are parking on the side streets. So I guess for those reasons and for the sake of this project, improving the safety and the walkability of this neighborhood, particularly with the school, I'm comfortable moving forward with this resolution. And then also, as you said, given that this is up for a reconstruct in the next few years or several years, we'll have an option to reconsider at that time. So I guess, Mr. Chair, I'd be prepared to make the motion if you're ready.
Yeah, go ahead.
Move to recommend adoption of the attached resolution, which would remove on-street parking from the south side of Oak between 15th Street Southeast and 16th Street Southeast.
I'll second. Any other discussion? Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, I'm just going to speak up, just to be consistent about my desire to see us continue to push for on-street parking. I think that it's something that we've consistently said that we want to see in the city, and so I'm going to be consistent with my language about believing that we should have on-street parking and that we should be pushing for it.
I agree. I'll just say, we did, I think, push for it, looked at these options. I think the fact that we can't fit a 14-foot blade through there definitely puts a wrench in keeping that parking there, just based on the options we have available. It is a loss of on-street parking, which we don't. We want to limit that anytime we can. But in this, I think this makes at least some sense this time. So, any other discussion?
I think overall, we are still, I would agree, we're overall still looking to promote the on-street, but, you know, isolated situation, I think this is a little bit of a unique situation where we can diverge or compromise a little bit on that, so that's all for me, I'm gonna support.
All right, hearing no further discussion, we'll move to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. We can convene to the, adjourn to the council meeting. We could have had this one at 7:15.
First time ever.
Well, Jamie's not.
Yes.